All right, y'all, what's going on? It's Combo Breaker 99 back with another post-fight breakdown. All right, y'all, just wanted to come back on and talk about this one. Y'all know I've been high on this young lady right here. Shout out to Melissa Croden. You know, she came in, made a big statement in her UFC debut. Now, of course, there's some things I'm going to critique. You know, that's how I always do. But I got to admit that I like the heart and the grit that Melissa Croden showed in this fight. It just really looked like, you know, she was just trying to shake off that UFC jitter, this being her first fight. But overall, you know, I like how she started turning it up and just started really going in there and utilizing her size and, you know, her skill set. You know, she started off a little, like I said, just a little bit, I hate to say timid, but maybe just a little reserved. But as the fight went on, you know, she started realizing, you know, what she's capable of, and she started to come on a little bit more confident. Now, Tainara Lisboa, I got to give her a lot of credit. You know, when you look at the size difference here, Tainara Lisboa looked like a little flyweight up in there. But still, I mean, she was taking the fight to Melissa Croden. And that's one of the things I said when I was, you know, talking about the matchups between these new signees with the UFC in the bantamweight division is that I think that Melissa Croden is going to have her hands full with Tainara Lisboa. I thought Tainara Lisboa was the more, she's probably the tougher competition between Luana Carolina and Alex Leva. Okay, you know, I'm just being honest. I think, you know, Tainara Lisboa, you know, she's more of a well-rounded fighter. You know, she's got a good Muay Thai background, good clinch game. And you see she was trying to initiate takedowns. She was trying to adjust and do a little bit of everything. But when it just came down to it, she was facing a bigger, stronger, more powerful woman in there that also had a good ground game. I mean, right from the jump in the first round, you could see the size difference, but you could also see like the speed and power difference here. Lisboa, she was faster with the combinations, and she was touching Croden up a lot in the first round. But when Croden would land, she had the heavier, more powerful shots, like the heavy body kicks. They were moving Lisboa, and so were the right hands. Lisboa, you know, I liked her aggression, and that's what she needed to do, you know, to kind of build up a lead and make her presence known. She was, you know, using that aggressive clinch, you know, landed some good elbows on the inside. But it was when Croden really started to, you know, step in with her shots. Well, actually, Lisboa stepped in a couple of times and, you know, did half of the work for her, because there's one point when Croden just threw out a jab and Lisboa stepped into it. It cracked her right on the chin, and it kind of stunned her. You know, it kind of stunned her. So you can see like Croden does have a heavy jab. And then, you know, I like how she was just starting to let her right hand go. You know, she landed a good right uppercut and kind of buzzed Lisboa at one point. Lisboa, I think that, you know, throughout the round, you know, she was taking a lot of unnecessary punishment, but so was Croden. You know, Croden was also taking a lot of shots here, you know, and that's the one thing, you know, I'll talk about later, you know, with Melissa Croden as far as moving forward against, you know, better strikers. But I did give Lisboa the first round. I thought she landed more damaging blows, you know, towards the end of the round. Croden's nose started leaking too. And I think, you know, a lot of the significant strikes were on Lisboa's side. But Croden was doing some damage. You know, she started doing damage with those heavy body kicks. Again, in the second round, Lisboa, she started off more aggressive with the clinch, you know, wanted to work on the inside and get a takedown. But, you know, Croden, she started to step it up. You know, she started to show that she was the stronger fighter. You know, she bounced up quick from that takedown attempt, started landing some hard body kicks that were really effective. You know, she just started using that strength, you know, really using her size in the clinch and reversing a couple of times in the clinch and landing some good heavy shots. So, you know, when Croden started to turn it on, Lisboa started to feel it. You know, she started to feel it. Croden started letting that aggression go and started hitting her with some big punches. So I like what Croden was doing towards the end of the second round. You know, she started to really put it on her and almost got her out of there in the second round, I believe. In the second round, Lisboa looked like she was hurt, but she made it out of the round. So at this point, I had it tied up, but going into the third round, Croden, she started looking a lot more confident. You know, she started like bouncing, and you could see like the speed difference too. Like first round, she looked a little slow, but in this third round, you know, she started bouncing on the balls of her feet. You know, she was moving her head more, and the jab was starting to flow with more confidence. Even the right hand, you know, she started cracking Lisboa with the right hand. You know, there's a little bit more fluidity there, a little bit more, you know, pep in her step. Again, that clinch game, you know, that clinch game was coming on from Lisboa, but Croden, you know, using her size, she was really just wearing down Lisboa, you know, every time she tried to initiate that clinch. And you could see like that heaviness from Croden was starting to wear on her. You know, Lisboa was trying to move her so much throughout the rounds, but she started getting worked. You know, she started getting worked. And I think it was like the second round too, when she went for a takedown, Croden took her down. You know, Croden did take her down. But I think maybe it was in the third. Yeah, I think it was in the third. Croden winds up taking Lisboa down. She's taking her down. At this point, Croden's beating her up. Croden's landing some heavy hammer fists, and she's just really pounding on her at this point. And Lisboa looks like she's starting to ball up. But Lisboa bounces back up, only to eat some more punches, man. She's getting beat up by the barrage coming from Croden. I thought she was about to knock her out on her feet, but again, when she fell to the mat, I mean, Croden started to unload. The referee had to step in. So good, solid third round finish for Melissa Croden. I got to give her a lot of respect there. She came in a little tentative at first, but as time went on, she started to let it go, and she started to put in that work. So yeah, it was good. It was a good representation of her heart and grit. But yeah, definitely moving forward, I think the one thing I want to see with Melissa Croden is improving her defense. Like, she did move her head a couple of times in the first and second round. Like, I like the head movement. There's a few times where she was using some good upper body movement, just like taking her head off the line. But she's got to do more of that. And she's also got to use more of her range, because there was a lot of times when she tried to step in that left her to get hit by some of Lisboa's combinations. Now, if she lets girls come to her, if she uses her reach a lot more, she can control the outside. She can, fight like a tall, long fighter like she should, And yeah, like I said, I like how she came on strong with the strength and started to put on that, big girl type of size fight on her, and just, wear Lisboa down. But yeah, definitely moving forward, I need to see a little bit more defense, especially stepping it up against the other strikers in the division like Irene Aldana. Of course, she already fought Jacqueline Cavalcanti in the LFA, but they might cross paths again, so you never know. So just little things like that. But yeah, I saw Melissa Croden use a little bit of everything in this fight. She had to use a ground game, clinch game, boxing, which I thought she was going to have to do anyways. But yeah, out of all three of the bantamweights that fought between Montague, Bia Mesquita, and Melissa Croden, it's really hard to gauge who looked the best, because again, it kind of comes down to competition. But I would say Croden's performance, it was more so crowd pleasing to me. Like, I thought Croden's fight just showed some up and down moments and also adjustments in there. So I'm not just saying that because I'm a fan, but yeah, I thought Bia Mesquita's fight was also impressive. And Michelle Montague, she's big and she's strong too. But out of all three, I think Croden had the more competition to deal with in her fight. So yeah, what do y'all think, guys? I think Melissa Croden, yeah, like I said, she definitely has potential to crack top 15. I would like to see her matched up against Melissa Mullins. That's another, striker in there that likes to go all out and brawl out, and also has good takedowns and good jiu-jitsu. That's another thing about Melissa Mullins. She's got a ground game. So I think her style is kind of similar to Croden, except she's a little bit more like explosive and aggressive, where I think Croden is a little bit more technically sound at times. But that would just be a good fight. That would be a good fight. Both of them are durable and both like to slug it out sometimes. But I would like to see Croden actually, take the next level in that fight and fight a little bit more cleaner. So that's the fight I'd like to see next. Tainara Lisboa, she's lost 2 in a row now, but, she's had an injury, so I'm not going to knock her, man. Like, I'm not one to say, she needs to get cut off at 2 fights, just a 2-fight losing streak. I mean, come on now. We see Andrea Lee lose like 6 in a row, still be in the UFC, right? But Tainara Lisboa, I think she just needs a little time to heal up and recover. I don't know, man. Like, I don't know if she's too small for bantamweight. I know she beat Jessica Rose Clark, but maybe she might want to take a crack at flyweight. That's just me, just kind of looking at her size. Maybe I need to look at some of her past fights again and just see how she looks during her off time. But she's not really that big of a bantamweight. She might do better at flyweight. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I have to look at her size again, though. Maybe it's just because Croden looks so big. But yeah, I think she still deserves another chance, crack at whoever, Jocelyn Nunes, Chelsea Chandler, any of these fighters that are still unranked as well, that'd be a good matchup for her. But yeah, I'd like to see battle of the Melissas, Melissa Croden versus Melissa Mullins. What do y'all think, guys? Let me know in the comment section. I'm out. Make sure y'all subscribe. Peace.